And so I welcome any questions during the lecture. And so if you have any questions, you can just ask. But you need to unmute yourself first because most people are currently muted. Or you can just type in the chat, and I'll try to keep an eye on the chat all the time. Okay, and then let me share the screen now. Where is the sharing? Of course. And this one. Oops. Yes, so I have a question from Tommy asking, are all the sessions going to be recorded and uploaded to the module page so can be viewed later? The answer is yes. But only the lecture will be recorded. The labs will not. Because lab is mostly discussions among the students. Okay, let me see if I can get that right. Okay. Yeah. And can you see the slides now?
Yes. Yeah, we can.
Good. Yeah. I think maybe I can't really do it here now. You should be able to and you should be able to vote in Zoom. So I'd just like to try that now. So if you go to the participant list, and you should see some buttons at the bottom, says yes, no, go slower, go faster, etc. Can you see that? And if you can see, please click on yes, so I can see you know how to use that. Okay, yeah, okay, very good. So sometimes I might do some quick questions, and it may be just yes, no questions, and then we can just use that, and you can vote. Also, you can try to use the and go slower, go faster button, and so I can try to adjust as well. Okay. Okay, and I'm gonna start the actual slides now. Sorry about this. Try to organize all the windows and the chat and the participant list. Okay, and so this module is about is 4060. So it's one of the data science modules, and this focuses on the visual data analysis. And I'm gonna explain what that is, how is that different from the other modules a little bit later. I just want to, yeah, seems. And so, and firstly, very quickly go through the teaching team. And so I'm the module leader. So Kai is my name. And we also have two other lecturers, Lei Xi and Xiao Hong. And so I will cover the first half of the module, and Lei Xi and Xiao Hong will cover the second half. And also we have a few overseas campus lecture as well. So, and the same module is run in Malta and Dubai campus. And so these are their local lectures, which is delivering the teaching there. Okay, and as I mentioned, so I'll cover the first half. And so from week 11 to week 12, and which is the first term plus the first week of the second term, which is week 12. And we will be talking about data visualization. And then after that, and Xiao Hong will covering the part on image analysis, and I'll explain a little bit more details what each of these topic means. And then the last kind of a quarter, the last 6 weeks will be covered by Lei Xi, and she will cover visual analytics workflow. Okay, and in terms of lectures and labs, and you probably already know all the lectures and labs will be online. I think this definitely for the first term, but probably for the second term as well. And we'll see, depends on how the COVID situation is at that time next year. And I will be mainly using Zoom. It seems okay. Most of you find the Zoom link. And again, different lecturers may choose different software. And I haven't confirmed with Leishi and Xiaohong yet. And there's a chance they might use Zoom. But also there might be a chance they want to use some other software like what are the options? I think they might also use Neuro, which is a system the university has. Okay. Mm. Okay. And so in terms of length, and we will have like 3 hours of teaching each week, but the lecture will be 1.5 hours instead of 1 hours for some of the other modules. And so in terms of lecture, going to be a mix of the theory, and the practical skills. So theory is talking about, say, for example, design principles of and visual design, or how people see things visually. And can be a little bit dry, but I'll try to make it interesting. And the practical skills part will be mostly introducing different tools that will be used for the module. So the tools that can use to create a visualization. Okay, and then in terms of lecture, it will including slides more for the more theoretical part, and sometimes live visualization sessions. I'll show you some of the how to use the tools or how to code. For example, the second part of visualization, I'm going to use something called Visualize, which involves some little programming. Yeah, and I think I mentioned this already, and the lectures will be recorded and made available online afterwards. And so I'm just doing the recording in Zoom and just see how it works. And if it doesn't work very well, I'll try something else this next week. Okay, and so the lab is also 1.5 hours, slightly shorter than maybe some other modules. I guess, and many modules takes 1 hour lecture and 2 hours lab. And the reason we have a 1.5 hour lecture is I found just not enough time to cover everything I want to in 1 hour lecture slot. So I made it slightly longer. Okay, and in terms of lab, we could be mostly doing group exercises in the first 2 weeks. And so we're gonna start actually from this week, our first group exercise. And in the second half, the format will be slightly different. And some of these exercises will be marked. I think there's only, no, there's, I'm gonna go cover this a little bit later, but there's 2 exercises that will be marked. Otherwise, and other exercises not marked. So the marked exercise means the mark goes to your total mark of the module. And as I mentioned, the lab will not be recorded. Is there any questions so far? Okay, I think that's okay. I think that means okay. Okay, and so gonna talk a little bit about the textbook. And so the personal e-textbook I picked for this module and is called Visualization Analysis and Design. So, so the personal e-textbook means every student should get a free copy. And have any one of you got the copy yet? Or
Yeah, I got my copy.
okay, that's fine. And if someone of you got that means it's already available. That's good to know. And there's more than one more than one book for the module. And even just for the first book, the visualization analysis and design is quite long. We will not cover the entire book, and during the lecture, or usually at the end of each lecture, I will mention which chapter we covered from the book, and then it will be part of the reading after the class. And there's a few other books that you can see. These are all listed on the and reading list. So that is something on the module page you can go to. And but I can also show here quickly. I need to switch to the the browser so you can see the module page. Okay. And so I hope you can see the reading list now. Yes? No?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Yeah. And so this is listed the, okay, it says the personal e-textbook is this one, the visualization analysis and design. And then these are the essential readings. So the visualization analysis and design is for the first 12 weeks. And this one, mastering the information age, solving problems with your visual analytics, and is mostly for Leishi's part. That will be covered like the last 6 weeks. And then there's also another book called Image Processing, Analysis, and Machine Vision. So this is a textbook for the image analysis part. And also we have two recommended and readings. And so the first one is called Tableau Your Data. So this is the book actually introduce you how to use the software Tableau. And that's we're going to use in the first 6 weeks or for the first coursework. And then there's another one, which is just a general, and it's an academic journal. So it usually publish research work related to the visualization and the computer graphics. So that's just for your reading. And if you're interested to find out more in terms of the latest work in the visualization field, so that will be a good place to look at. Okay, I'm gonna switch back to my slides. And okay, and so I now switch back to the slides. I just want to ask, can you tell me which screen are you seeing? Are you seeing the actual full screen slides, or are you seeing the more like the presenter view? Can anyone tell me if I pick the right screen to share?
It's not full screen. It's like split.
Okay. You're looking at the split one. Okay.
Split one, yeah.
Okay, see. So that's not the right one. Okay, so it looks like I have to share the desktop instead. So now is full screen one, right?
Yes, it's full.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So at least get the right one this time. Okay. Oh yeah. And so let's just continue. So and many of these books has like a digital copy available. And this, of course, the first book is your personal e-textbook. There will be a digital copy. Then for the other ones, if it is available as a digital copy, it should show up in the reading list. So if I go back to my reading list, move this one somewhere. And so, for example, if I click on this one, and it will say, okay, and this part and tells you the hard copy. So it says in the Shepherd Library, which is the UK library, it has 3 copies available. They're both, all of them are available. But I believe this book should also available as electronic version. Oh, it doesn't show. Okay. At least this one, it says, okay, it has option that you can view online. So if you click that, it goes to the online version of that book. And then, okay. Not ideal. Why I couldn't get this one? Essential. Oh, okay. Yeah. I see. So, and my view is slightly different because currently it recognized me and as the module leader, so it will show this slightly. Let me log out first. What's the difference? Okay. Yeah, so, and this is probably what you will see, and it's slightly different. And so the book I just mentioned, the visualization analysis and design is not shown up there yet, and it should be there quite soon. So you will just see these two books for now, but the main textbook should be there very soon. Okay, now I'm gonna go into the actual different three main topics and cover a little bit more about what they are. And so in the visualization, we're gonna start with an introduction and what data visualization is, why we need it, and how do you do that. And then we're gonna talk about data types and task abstraction. And so these are two very important. So, you kind of important factor how you decide what visualization to use. So it will depends on the type of data, for example, whether it's numbers or maybe it's a geological, like spatial data. And then again, depends on different task and whether, for example, you know something you're looking for, or then you can do it. And versus, for example, you don't really know what you're looking for, you just want to get an overview of what's in the data. Then you choose different visualization methods. Okay, and then follow after that, we're going to covering some visual encoding principles. And the encoding principle basically just means how do you turn, say, the data into visual representations. You either turn some numbers or some types into, say, colors, size, or other visual elements. So there's certain principle there, and pop-out effect is one of them. But essentially what this means is we want to design the way that's easier for the human to recognize any patterns in the data. Okay, and then we're going to come some common visualization techniques. And so these will be depends on the type of data mostly. And so, for example, we'll have charts. So these are usually for an spreadsheet like of data. And the maps is for geospatial data. We have locations, paths, areas, etc. And finally, networks are for visualizing, say, the social networks type of data. And we're also going to talk about a little bit about interaction. And interaction basically means most of the kind of modern visualization is not static. It's not just like a picture, and you can interact with it, and it will change, either show more information or show different part of the information, or providing an overview. So that's the interaction part. We'll also cover multiple views, and this is a dashboard in the sense. And you probably all seen dashboard, which is example of multiple views. You have different charts or networks or even some text in the same view, and that's called dashboard. And also we're going to cover something called visual narrative. And visual narrative in the sense, and it's not one single visualization, so which could be interactive, but a series of visualizations. And it's using them to present almost like a story. Think of like comic books, and so you have lots of pictures and which telling the story. And obviously in this case, it's more for, say, data analysis purpose, and you're using multiple visualizations to tell a visual story that happens in the data. just very briefly, and data visualization and means using human cognition for pattern discoveries. So this is kind of in contrast to other modules you will be doing. For example, you will do learn machine learning or natural language processing or other algorithms. And these are mostly using computation methods for pattern discoveries. And so this is one of the examples and used to illustrate this. And in terms, okay. And has anyone seen this before? You can raise your hand or say yes, or how do you get to claim your, or can you just pick no in the participant list? So I know. Ah,
No, we haven't seen it. So.
yeah.
Yeah.
And vector, can I see? Okay, vector is also no. Okay, that's fine. And so you can probably see, and you can see this like Facebook icon at the bottom left corner. So that basically means, and this is a data set from Facebook. And so each point is a person, and two persons are connected if they are friends on Facebook. And so that you can see, for example, almost the entire US is light up because there's so many users. You cannot see in each individual dot, but almost see a whole area is light up. And you can see all these different connections. And I don't know what island is here, but certainly it has lots of connections between this and mainland America. And also there's a lot of connections across the Atlantic as well. Okay, so these are the things that we as human can see quite quickly. Is there any particular pattern that you can see? So can I ask everyone just to tell me one pattern you can see from the visualization?
I can see like Europe and America is both have lighted up quite a lot.
Yeah. So that means there's lots of users in these two like continents. This is
Yeah.
probably the main user base of Facebook. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that's sorry, Amima, is it?
Yeah, Amima.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Liban, can you
Yeah.
see something from this visualization?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing as Mimo, but
Okay. Yeah.
I can see some. I think I can see some faint lines between like some regions.
Yeah.
As well, I think that might be them interacting with each other. So people from the UK might be interacting with people in North America, for example. Maybe I think that yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yes, yes, yeah, very good.
Thank you.
And so actually, I just want to point out, actually, and because this visualization itself does not actually including the continent itself. In a sense, it does not draw the boundaries of where the Europe or Africa is. But just because there's so many users, you can quite clearly see the shapes of America and Europe, just because there are so many users there. Excuse me. Whereas, for example, in Africa, because it's much less users there, the shape is not as obvious, isn't it? And then, can you see something a little bit odd from this visualization? Can I pick on Roya? Hello, are you there, Roya?
Yes, yes, I'm
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I'm looking. Just as you highlighted the areas that they are lighting up a little bit, some of the areas are a bit faded, so maybe there is no usage
But
of.
did you find anything unusual or a little bit odd that you can see from the visualization?
Not really, no.
No? Okay, that's fine.
Is
Is anyone want to give it a try?
Is it that China and Russia are quite dark?
Yes, exactly. So you can see, and this part of the how do I say, the visualization, and based on our common knowledge, we know there's lots of land, there's a very big land mass there, but it's almost like completely dark.
Yeah.
And on the visualization, the reason is because, and say the Facebook is mostly banned in Russia and China, so you would actually would not see that from the visualization. So that's kind of like a maybe, for lack of better word, like anti-pattern. So something actually does not exist in the data, and because human use our common knowledge, we can pick it up. Whereas if you say use an algorithm, it will be very difficult for it to detect. And the algorithm might be easier to find out, okay, where has the most number of users, but to detect any patterns just based on the land and or the population knowledge, it's very hard for the algorithm to do. Whereas human can pick this up very easily. And so the main approach here for the visual data analysis is actually to combine this kind of cognitive and common knowledge together with the computation power of the machines, and to make the entire data analysis process a bit better. Okay, and so in terms of software going to be used for this part, and the first one is called Tableau. And anyone heard of Tableau before?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, yeah, Tommy also heard of that before. Good.
So I use Tableau quite a lot at work. So
Oh,
I
okay.
usually use Tableau Desktop and Tableau Server. So with Tableau Desktop is where you connect to a data source and you create the visualization and you upload it onto Tableau Server where other people can view your report or visualization.
Yeah, exactly. So Tableau is a software, and it's does not require any coding. So it's really just clicking through the buttons, menus to create a visualization. And this is much more advanced than what you can do in the Excel. So in the Excel, you can do simple charts like line charts, scatter plot, but say in Tableau, it allows you to do much more complex ones. And for example, you can do interactive visualization. For example, if you mouse over something, it will show more details. You can create a filter on the side, then you can select by the filter, for example, select different columns or different countries, and then the visualization will, I think, and also and support something like dashboard, and essentially means you can create one view with multiple visualizations inside, or stories. The stories is a series of visualization, and so it's probably the one of the most popular visualization software currently used, and used by many companies, and including Middlesex University. And anyone knows maybe what would be the second most popular one? Anyone knows?
Would it be Power BI?
Yes, exactly. So the Power BI is made by Microsoft. So it kind of part of it's kind of, I'm not sure if exactly officially it's part of the Office suite, but it tries to do something quite similar to Tableau. But Tableau started much earlier and much more established, I guess, maybe even a bigger user base among actually companies. Okay. Oh yeah, and so recently this Tableau was bought and by Salesforce. And have you heard of Salesforce before? Anyone?
Yeah,
No?
I have.
Okay, yeah. So if you have worked them, you might use them. So it's like a customer relationship management systems. And the special things about Salesforce is it's completely cloud-based. So you don't buy, it's like a Microsoft Office and then install on your computer. You just connect to the server and you can start using it. And so it's probably the largest one, and they bought Tableau for 15.7 billion. But this is not that recent now, a few years. And so that's the first part of the visualization using Tableau. And then for the second part, you actually will need to write some code. And the particular library we're going to use, or first, I mean, the language we're going to be using is JavaScript. And so that is web-based language. That means the things you created are going to display in the browser. And we pick the particularly library we're going to use is called the Visualisations. So it's a JavaScript library for data visualization. So it allows you to create and visualizations with very little code. And so it will require some basic knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I assume you all know some of this. Can I again see a show of hands? Say how many of you know a little bit about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript before? If you could just use yes or no button. Ah. Okay. What about you, Roya? Have you used them before?
Yes, we've used the HTML, CSS, but not JavaScript. Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I guess that turn out to be half and half. So half of you done that before and half not. And so to do the visualization, it does not need too much knowledge about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I will do a quick review, probably using one lab to do a quick review of these basic knowledges before we move on to the Visualisations library. And if you're a bit worried, maybe you want to just do a kind of catch up or learn them yourself. There's plenty of books online and that you can do and to cover these. I'm not gonna covering too much details, but so this is probably the library that's used the least amount of coding required to create visualization, which is one of the reasons why I picked it. Okay, and so here is the lecture plan. So that's first 12 weeks. And I'm not going to go through this again. You will see it in the module handbook as well. So it's quite similar to, so basically cover the topics we already mentioned in a little bit more details. Okay, and so for this module, we're going to have something called the reading week. And essentially that will be the week before the coursework is due. And we will not have any lectures or labs for that week. So that just will be a week for you to work on your coursework and doing reviews. But still, I would recommend don't say leave everything to the week before the deadline. There might be too much rush because other modules would have different work still going on that week as well. You will not have all the time to work on the coursework. Okay, and we're gonna have just one week will be the week 7 for the reading week for the first term. So the first coursework will be due in week 8, so that we can have week 7 as a reading week. And so other modules may be different. So this is decided by the module leaders. Some other modules may decide to have them, some may decide not to have any of them. And for the ones we visit, and the actual week will be different. Depends on what the module leader's decision. Okay, so that covers, hopefully give you an overview of the first 12 weeks or the first half of the module. And any questions so far? So I assume that's no question.
No.
Okay, yeah. And then we move on to the second half. And so the first 6 weeks of the second half gonna mostly on image analysis. And it will be using the software called MATLAB. And you might be using MATLAB for other purpose. For example, you might, I mean, it's a very powerful library with almost everything in it, and it can do many other things, including machine learning. But for this part of the course, and it will be mostly looking at doing image processing. So that's a picture of what MATLAB might look like. Don't think that's the latest version. And so it will do simple things, such as segmentation of the images or feature extraction. and hopefully have a couple of pictures to show what these means later. Okay. And also, it's related to and will be related to machine learning as well, and talking about some of the classification techniques related to images. I guess the simplest image, for example, is to detect whether the pictures contains a cat or not. Then basically you have two classes. One is picture with cat and the other class will picture without cat. And you can train a machine learning model to recognize pictures to automatically put them into either of the categories. Okay, here's the lecture plan. So first is the introduction for MATLAB, and then basic techniques for image analysis, including segmentation, feature extraction. And so I think we have a picture for segmentation. The feature extraction, for example, is say to extract the lines from the picture. So you might give a photo, but it can extract the lines, which is like the border of the building or the kind of, and the horizon where the landscape stops and the sky starts, these kind of thing. Okay, and you can use actually in the MATLAB, you can create a simple user interface to visualize these features, and then talk about the image classification based on machine learning techniques. And I think there might be some content on deep learning as well, but it's still for the classification purpose. So basically put into, say, pictures into different buckets or classes or categories. That's what the classification do. Okay, so that's the kind of week 13 to week 18, and the 6 weeks after that, which will be the last part of this module, will be on the visual analytics workflow. And so again, so this is the part and which you actually don't have to do much programming. And so you will use a tool such as one shown on the screen now, and you can drag and drop these different blocks. And I think it's probably hard to see, but for example, this block represents reading data, for example, from a CSV file, and then you do some different data processing, each of these blocks, and basically, and this is, if I can read, no, I can't read. So maybe this is the data pre-processing, and this becomes the classification, etc., etc. So what you really need to do is just to add these different blocks to the workflow, and then connect them together. So it allows you to do some machine learning through a visual interface, and with very little programming, if there's any. Okay, so this will allows you to build much more complex analysis workflow. So not just a visualization and multiple analysis as well. Yeah, and then particularly software, which is shown here, is called 9. And I think it's free and open source, and this is what interface look like. And we'll cover in more details how to use it and in that part of the module. Okay, I guess they're gonna just not gonna go through this part, and essentially it just the more detailed breakdown of the 6 weeks will be covered in 6 weeks for the last part of the module. Okay, and before we go on to the assessment, any question? Okay.
Just a quick question, Kai.
Yeah.
This mini project.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Okay, so I think mini project basically just a different term for the coursework. So essentially, usually the last part of the module will be the time to work on the project, answer questions. But the actual coursework will be introduced much earlier on. actually, I think all the details of the coursework is already in the module handbook. You can have a look now, which
Right.
is actually we're going to go through next.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I've just got a question as well.
Yeah.
So you said that, you know, if we don't know JavaScript, that you recommend for us to learn JavaScript. Is that right? Or did you mean HTML? Which one was it?
Okay, so actually there are three of those: HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. They all kind of work together.
Yep.
I would say probably most useful will be the HTML and JavaScript. We will use quite little CSS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, now come on to assessment, and the module will be assessed by the coursework only, so we don't have any exams. And overall, you need to get at least 40% to pass the module. And so it's not a requirement to pass every coursework to pass the entire module. So long as the total mark is more than 40%, you can pass the module. Even you missed one of the coursework, that's also fine. And there are in total 4 pieces of coursework. Coursework 1 and 2, and is done or needs to be completed in the first term. So they're both on the data visualization. So the first one is using Tableau, and the second one is using JavaScript, which is using a particular library called the Visualisation. And the third one is developing the image analysis using MATLAB. And finally is using 9 to construct this visual analytics workflow. So yeah, each of them accounts for 25% and add up to in total 100% for the module. And you just need to get 40% out of this 100%, which shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, and this is the old slides. And if you need any extension, and please use this extenuating circumstances form, which is an online form you can fill out. And then they will check if it's anything needed. But I mean, because the COVID situation, and sometimes, for example, university might give a kind of general extension to every coursework deadlines. But then if that isn't such kind of general extension, and you need to use this to apply for extension. Okay, and there's also late penalties for if you miss deadline. For example, if you didn't get extension, you'll get some late penalties. And the late penalty is set in such a way, if you only need 1 or 2 more days, it might be better to spend that time and take a little bit of penalty. It's still much better than saying if you submit on time. Okay, I'll try to see if I can explain this better. And so the penalty will be 5% for each day after the deadline. And so it is the 5% of the final mark, not 5% of the total mark. And let's say if we go back before, you can see we have these 4 courseworks, each one is 25%. So it doesn't mean if you miss one day, you will lose 5% out of 25, but 5% of your final mark. Okay, and so let's say if you get 30 for your work, and it is 2 days late, so that means you will lose 10% of your final mark. So that will be the 10% of the 30, which is 3 marks, and that give you a final mark of 27. So it's not like you're gonna lose 10% out of 30, makes it 20. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, that's good. So slightly, I mean, some students would interpreted the 5% as the 5% of the, say, as the total module mark, which is not that. So for example, if you miss the deadline by 2 days, that means you only lose 10% of the final mark, in this case, 3%, which is not that much. So in that case, you might want to, if you really just need a bit more time to finish the coursework. Whereas if you miss the deadline by 10 days or even more, then that means you're gonna lose half the mark or even more. And then start to really make a difference. Okay, and so the first coursework, and as I mentioned, it will be visualization within Tableau. Okay, I think the deadline is week 7 or should be week 8. Anyway, and it should be on the module page. And we're going to use some public health data, and you're going to use the Tableau to analyze the data set. So this is kind of a small part of the data set you will be given. And I think the data set is on the module page now. And so you can see different countries. And for men, so can you read the text at all? Is that too small?
No, we can read it.
Oh, okay. And for me, it's really small, but it just says for Afghanistan, for the men, in the year 1975, the average, the percentage of the population have raised blood pressure is 0.25 something, 25%, which is actually quite high. So you would have the measurements for different countries over time for blood pressure and for body mass index. So that's a way to measure whether you are overweight or not, and the percentage of the population have diabetes. And we're going to talk more about the details of the data set and what you need to do later on. Now you just need to get the feeling, and your job will be to create some visualizations. So this is some simple visualizations people did. And so each row here represents one country, probably can't read. And the top row is Afghanistan, the second one is Albania, etc., etc. I think that's just sorted by country name. And this shows the average percentage of the population with the high blood pressure. And so starting the date of the data set is 1975 to 2015. You can see here the line goes up a bit. So this is kind of the simple visualization you can do. And obviously for the actual coursework, you can do more complex and interesting visualization than this. Okay, and in terms of marking scheme, so we'll start with, say, we're going to do kind of like a group exercise and something quite similar to the actual coursework, but simpler, but also done in a group in the lab. And the group will need to present, and that comes to 5% of the total 25% for this coursework. And then for actual the individual work, when it's submitted, we're going to look at these, the different data types, and the quality of the findings, what you discovered from data sets using the visualization, and how effective is your visual design. So when we measure the quality of the visual analysis, and it's not measured by how pretty or how fancy or how colorful the visualization is, it's measured by how easy the visualization shows up the patterns that you want people to see. So that's the effectiveness. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. And also there's 5% of the mark on using and more advanced features in Tableau, such as intact filtering and creating dashboard. And we'll cover how to do that later in the module. Okay, and the second coursework is using this JavaScript library called the Visualize, and it's due week 12. So that's the last week of the first half. Actually, usually is the first week of the second term. So for this one, you get a bit more time to work on because the Christmas New Year break and just before the coursework is due. We're going to use a data set and from something called the VAST challenge. If you're interested, you can follow the link and read it online. essentially it's a competition. They give you a data set and analysis task. You need to create visualizations to answer the task. And your job will be to use Visualize to visualize the data set and answer the questions it comes with it. And so so this is just to give you a quick feeling of what the actual coursework will be like. We're certainly going to talk more later when we covered more content and getting closer to the actual deadline of the coursework. And so what data set has is just a series of sensor readings in a natural reserve or national park. But these are all the sensors measuring chemicals inside the water. Sometimes so you will see some ID, some values, and this one is the location of the sensor when the data was taken, and here it tells you what measurement it is. So the first one is EDIS. It says the water temperature, and it says 2. I'm not exactly sure what the unit is, but seems to be quite cold. And this is a second measurement, which is at the same location, same date, but it measures dissolved oxygen in water, and it says 9.1. And basically, you have many different measurements at each location at each time point. And you have many locations and over a period of these data. Okay, and so your job in terms of actually doing the analysis is use visualization to see if we can find any trend or anomalies in the measurements of different chemicals or temperatures, other measurements about the waterways. And then discovering or describe any data quality issues. For example, missing data, or the data seems to not be correct. For example, we have water temperature higher than 100 degrees, which should not be possible in natural environment. And then, finally is to say, describe any particular concerns for the wildlife. And so there's a little bit of background of the entire coursework. And they were suspecting that some company is dumping chemicals into the waterways of the national park, which affecting the local wildlife there. And so that's kind of background and for the data set and questions. And so the last question would be, say, can you find any concerns about the chemical and levels in the water might affect the wildlife in the national park? And also just to mention, for this particular coursework, you don't need to understand what chemicals and how that affect the wildlife. That's not provided in the data set, but also not needed for you to say check online or go through internet to find those. That's not needed. All you need to say, okay, you find this chemical level becomes much higher during this period, and you think it might be affecting wildlife, and that will be completely fine. Yeah. Okay, and so this is some of the examples people developed using, and this is not developed in this module, but I mentioned this is a competition, so these are one of the entries people entered and into this competition, and you can see what they produced. Okay, and in terms of marking scheme, again, it has a practice in lab, which will be done in the group mode, and then it will be a presentation after that's finished. And in terms of individual work, and it counts for 20%, including the quality of the findings. So it depends on, did you find anything interesting or something not so interesting? And the effectiveness of your visual design and the justification of your visual design. You try to say why my design is effective based on what's covered in the module. And then finally, the quality of the visualization code. So you need to write some code to create the visualization and how good those things are. And okay, gonna just stop there briefly. And any questions so far?
Yeah.
For these two, yeah.
I just have a question about the, you know, you're talking about the group work.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5%. Is that the one that you've put up on where it says lab visual versus non-visual? Is that is this please prepare a PowerPoint slide? Is it that one?
Yes, quite similar. So the lab work and will be included in the lab sheet. We have a lab sheet every week to say what are the tasks you will do, and the what is that how do I say your name?
Shana.
Just Shana.
Lakshana.
Okay, Lakshana, yeah. Mentioned, so that was the task for the first week, but that one is not marked. But the actual marked work will be quite similar. You will be given the task, I think the week before, and then the group will work on it and present in the week after. And say one of the presentations will be marked for 5% for this coursework.
Okay, when is that the presentation?
And usually you have a week to work on the visualization design. So
Okay.
you'll be given a task this week, and next week the group needs to present.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, very good. And any other question? Okay. So move on to the next one, which is image analysis. I think we covered this, mentioned this already. Okay, so the deadline will be week 18, which is the end of the third period. So there are two options. The first option is actually, if you don't want to write code in MATLAB, you can write an essay as well. That's the first option. You can write the page essay on deep learning about data visualization. And so these are the marking schemes for that part of work. And I'm probably not going to go through these in much details. And if you're interested or if you have any question now, you can contact Xiaohong, who is going to be teaching that part. And her email address should be in the module handbook. And you can see her email address. Okay, and the second part will be doing edge detections. And so for this one, you create a simple software in MATLAB, and that allows you to detect edges in the pictures. And for example, you can see on the left is a picture with some rice grain in it. And you write some code, and it should providing the picture on the right-hand side, which detects the edges of all the rices. That's why you see these only the lines there. And you can have a different picture, for example, of a person on the left, and then after you do the edge detection, you should see the outlines of the person on the right-hand side. Okay. And so yeah, and so this gives you, say, for different kind of grade scale and what you need to do. Okay. And the last coursework will be due in week 24, which is the end of the term. And yeah, your job will be design the visual analytics workflow using the software called 9. We see a picture quickly before. And so this is where you pick different blocks and connect them together to form a workflow. And you can so start from loading the data to do the pre-processing, and then to do the actual, say, machine learning or visualization. Okay, and this is the marking scheme. So you need to describe your data loading and pre-processing, talk about data mining, which is mostly non-visual analysis like machine learning, clustering, and also the visualization results. So these are 4 marks each. And then explain your goals and explain how your workflow achieves the goals, and finally describe the findings. Again, these are all 4 marks each. and finally, there is 1 additional mark and in terms of the presentation. So that makes total 25 marks. Okay, and so is there any questions about these 2 courseworks? I'll try to answer if there's any, but I think for more specific ones, it's best to contact the lecturer that will be teaching them. And so for this one, which is Analytic Workflow. That will be Lei Xi. And the one before will be Xiaohong. Okay. And so in terms of communication, so if you have any questions specific to lectures or labs, so it's best just to talk to the lecturers or tutors at the class or lab. That's probably the fast way. For example, if you have a question now, if you can ask me straight away, that's probably the easiest thing to do. And if you can't do that, because you only realize it afterwards, you can always email me. And the email address of different lectures are in the module handbook. Okay, but for example, and if there's some issues, for example, you're not happy with your coursework mark, you talk to the lecturers who marked your coursework, but you're still not happy, and then you can contact me as well, and I can try to resolve it. If we're still not happy, then we can talk to the program leader and so on and so forth. Yeah, and for anything not specific to the content we covered in the lecture or lab, and for example, you want to change lab, actually defer your coursework, which is actually, and you can contact me directly. Actually, for coursework deferral, you should do it online using the extenuating circumstance form. Yeah. Okay. And so if you want to contact me about any of these issues, email is probably the best way to contact me. And if you really want, we can also book meetings. And probably we won't be able to do any, say, face-to-face meeting physically, and it will have to be done online, and say using Zoom or other platforms. And also, or probably have to wait a few days at least. I'll try to make a time, but usually it'd be difficult to do it straight away. Okay, and also try to check your email regularly. And that's probably the easiest way for me to contact you. And actually, I think we might be able to use the Slack as well. Are you aware of the Slack setup for the cohort for the group this year?
Yeah, I tried to download it yesterday. I entered my email, but there was no groups. So there was different names of the groups, but I didn't recognize any of the names. So
yeah, Kai, I think we're waiting for an invite. I've actually emailed Giovanni about that yesterday as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we need an invite to actually join these groups.
That's right. And so that's set up by the Giovanni. So he has maybe the admin control of the entire Slack. I don't know what it's called, a group or something. And so it's like I don't know. Slack is like a messaging app, but you can have different channels. I think the way it's set up is you have different channels, one for each module, and then you can ask or post questions there. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, for the lecture, we finished now. So let me just see if I can find the Slack. I can show you. And can I again see a show of hands? How many of you used the Slack before? Okay, tell me done that before. Libyan, Amima, okay. Lakshina haven't. Okay. And maybe in a sense, it's quite similar to things like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. It's not that different. Okay, so Tommy asking about the WhatsApp group being set up. The answer is no, but I mean that doesn't stop you. For example, if you are all happy, the students, you can set up your own WhatsApp groups for you to communicate. And I think that's also actually what the student did last year when we do the group lab. So group work in the lab, I think something like WhatsApp helped the student to communicate. I think most of you prefer, say, something like a messaging app like WhatsApp over, say, emails. Let me see if I can find the Slack thing. So that's, give me a little bit time. Let me find my.
I think it would be good if we also set up a WhatsApp group as
Yes,
well.
yes.
But,
Yeah.
like to the other students, like how should we set this up?
For example, you can just do it now. So for example, and Lakshana, if you don't mind, you can say, I can collect the number of everyone now. They can just type in the chat, and then you can just create a group and add everyone to that.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it now? I mean, while I'm trying to sort out the URL to the Slack group, so you can just use the chat now, then you can try to set it up.
Should I add everyone or?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
That would be great if you could.
yeah.
Thanks.
Just someone create the group and add everyone else in there.
Yeah, so Kai, this is actually the page that I got to as well.
Yeah.
I need like a Slack so I actually got so whenever I put in my when I did create an account, it came up suggested groups for Middlesex.
Okay.
But none of them was the one that Giovanni mentioned.
Okay. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, so if you do sign in with your email address,
Okay, so ask me for a code. So I need to go get the code first. Where's? Okay, yeah, and so obviously, I'm already added, so you can see once I log into Slack, I can see this MS Data Science 2020. And it's opening now. Yeah, and so then you should see on the right-hand side, the people, obviously it looks like there's no student has been added yet. And I assume Giovanni will be able to do this for all the students. Excuse me. And what listed here are the just module leaders for different modules. And so that's Giovanni there. He's for one module leader for one of the modules. And there's David Windrich and Carlisle. And I think click on this person would allow you to direct message them, to send a message to one of the module leaders. And these are the so-called channels for different modules. So 4060 is this, and you could, and typing something here, then everyone on that channel or in the group should be able to see it. And there's 4070, 4050, and 4080.
Group for the WhatsApp, so if everyone can see.
And sorry, so that was a comment about the WhatsApp group. So that's created now, or?
Yeah, I've created it, Kai. It's Lakshana.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, so that's done now. And yeah, for the Slack, you probably just have to wait for the Giovanni to, I think he has to invite everyone into the group. Let me see. Yeah. Oh. Okay, maybe I could add you too. We have, yeah, a little bit of time. And if you could, and type in your email address in the chat, and let me see if I can add you to the Slack now. Oh, sorry, the Slack channel now. Okay, I have one here. Okay, so that's Lakshana, and that's Amima. Okay, I'm gonna add these three first. Okay, and Liban, Roya, and Vector, do you want to type in your
Yeah.
email so I can
Yeah, sure, no problem.
add you to the Slack now? Yeah, you can see. Okay, I have the Liban. Okay, that's Roya.
Thank you. I've been added now.
Yeah, okay, good. I think just missing Vector. Did you send me your email already, Vector? Or okay, yeah, I can see Amima now. Yeah, and Lakshana. Yeah, they already all joined. Good, good. So Vector, it's fine if you can't find the email address now. I'll see if I can find it, then I'll add you to the group. Yeah. Okay, and I think that's all. That's everything today now for the lecture, and so we'll start the lab. Can't remember now. And tomorrow, I think.
I think it's on Friday. That's what it says. It's Friday.
Friday?
On Thursday. On Thursday at 11:30.
Thursday. I meant
Yeah, yeah,
Thursday.
yeah. Yeah. So see you on Thursday then.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kai.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.